health and a little wealth and a lot of love.
With you, I think for a long time. I remember, stealing my mom's workout videos when I was before I was even old enough to be in high school, and doing workout videos because I thought I
middle
was
school?
I thought I was too fat. And once I got into high school and I played tennis, and that really thinned me out, but I still saw myself as that overweight little girl, and it impacted the way I felt about food. It impacted exercise. Even when I got into college, if I went to McDonald's and got an Oreo McFlurry, and it was in the middle of the night, I would look up how many calories were in an Oreo McFlurry and then have a near panic attack, and then go to the gym at my apartment complex and work out for 2 hours so that I could burn off the calories that I just ate from that food. And it didn't matter how thin I got.
Not an eating disorder?
I mean, it certainly can be.
I remember you told me that, but now as I think about it, like that's like you exercise all the calories that you're intaking. Yeah.
And it's not, purging. A lot of people think purging is only the throwing up after eating a meal, but you can also consider a binge and purge or a purge behavior as being excessively exercising or using excessive medications like laxatives.
Jeez.
So
you had an eating disorder. You just didn't know it.
At the time I felt like this is probably a little bit extreme, but I always felt better when I was thinner and I got more attention, and the positive reinforcement of having people compliment you when you lost weight, and I personally panicked if I ever gained even a few pounds. I would be distraught about it, and I would have to, to pivot, change course, and get back to the weight that I was before. And if I was at a different weight, even if it was technically a healthy weight, I've really always struggled with body dysmorphia and self-esteem issues. Yeah. And I think it really all ties back to my childhood. I think it does for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But when I
didn't think that sorry to interrupt, but this is like, we're going to take our time with this episode. This episode is 2 hours is 2 hours. This is super, super important. We're not going to sleep underneath the rug. I think that you still struggle with body dysmorphia. I mean, anyone who has eyes sees you, and you're absolutely stunning. You're gorgeous. You're a beautiful woman inside and out. And I always tell you this. I think confidence is so sexy. Like, it really is sexy to me. Like, I could see one of my friends is a body positive movement, and her confidence is sexy, and so, I think a gift that I would love to see from you is just to know that you are beautiful and you are sexy. Not because I'm telling you as your husband, because you really feel that way. I don't think you feel that way a lot. And that it's really concerning, and it's troubling because, even before we get ready for these episodes, sometimes it takes you longer because you are OCD about the way you look. And you can roll up out of bed and slap on some, I don't know, Vaseline and, you know what I mean? I mean, sometimes your hair would be like, you know what I mean? But at the same time, you're still beautiful.
It's something that sticks with you, and it's hard to quiet those thoughts.
Inner critic.
Yep.
Which we are actively in therapy for that.
Yeah.
Not me, but her.
I
Anxiety.
have been for a long time. And it leaches into a lot of aspects of your life. It leaches into your professional life and your dating life. It leaches into your professional life.
Like imposter syndrome.
Yeah, making you feel like you're not good enough no matter how much training you do, how much of a professional you are in that field. You always have that inner child in you that questions, am I good enough?
Right. The inner child.
Yeah, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And really, I think a changing point for me too was in college. I decided, I changed my major like 6 times. I went in knowing that I was probably going to do pre-med, but the way that pre-med works for a lot of different colleges is that you can choose whatever major you want as long as you stay on that pre-med or pre-health track where you do all the prerequisites. And so it's easier if you choose something probably like biology or chemistry because you have to get those classes in.
Right.
I think I started as a history major because
Jeez.
I was like, I love history.
Do you?
I do. I love history. I always have.
I've known you for 6 years, and this is news to me. Zoom in, Joe, and Josh.
But I do. I love history. I love learning about it.
You love learning. That's one thing I do agree.
And knowing where we've come from. But it did not match up with the pre-health at all. So it was taking a lot of extra courses. And so I changed and pivoted multiple times to make it a little bit easier to stay on that pre-health course. But I had an advisor that said, well, it's not a very characteristic major for people who are going into medicine, but food science and human nutrition is one that might be a little bit more interesting for you, not as dull as taking the, being a biology major or a chemistry major. And so I decided to do that, and it was life-changing. I remember my nutrition professor at the university.
What a good guidance counselor. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what a good guidance counselor. I did not get that advice. What was his name? Let's shout him out.
Honestly, this is going to be terrible. I don't remember. It's been so long.
Emily does not have the best memory. If you watch our last episode, I was quizzing her. She does not have the best memory. She has, I swear.
I've got too much stuff up here.
I was telling her, we all have this brain capacity, and Emily has stuffed it all with medicine. There's this little bit that doesn't have medicine. Just a little bit.
But I remember it was a she. It was her. She. I remember what she looks like.
I didn't say he.
I remember her desk and the things that were on her desk. I just don't remember her name. But I remember the conversation that I had with her.
It's probably another episode, like how people's memories work. Mm-hmm. Anyway, go ahead.
And I remember my nutrition professor, she just really was engaging and was passionate about food, and
that matters.
And really started the food as medicine concept in my brain.
Did they use those terms?
Maybe not in those terms, but I do remember we had to do a whole diet analysis where there was a software that we used, and we had to write down everything that we ate and input it into the software, and it would tell us, and it wasn't like a calorie counting type thing, it would tell us more of the micronutrients and what we weren't getting enough of, and how good our choices were from a whole foods, from a healthy standpoint. And I really took that with me into my medical career, into med school. When I did transfer, I didn't stay at University of Florida. I went to Florida State, and the analogous major was exercise science, which still had a lot of nutrition, but also had the exercise physiology to it. And I just found it fascinating. And I think that really helped me in my medical training too, because we really, for those of you who don't know, and I think it's becoming more of an issue now, in med school, there's not a lot of nutrition and exercise training.
That's just so weird to me. But that's what's wrong with traditional medicine. And that is why we broke off. That is why she quit her job. That is why she's
not the only reason, but
not the only reason, but the big reason. And we're doing this podcast because eventually we want to help people, obtain health, freedom, and being in tune with their bodies. Like, how sexy would that be if you could harmonize with your body? Well, I can't eat gluten. I can't eat broccoli. Like, I'm doing that. Like, I think it's powerful.
Yeah, and it's definitely impacted the way that I treated my patients. It impacted the way that we live our lives. And I know that was kind of a long-winded story, but it really is what essentially pushed me into getting my obesity medicine board certification, because I found that when I was in practice doing primary care, the patients that I really gravitated towards and the ones that I really enjoyed working with were the ones that wanted to talk about weight management and metabolic syndrome and trying to get off of medications that were tied more to their weight or their lifestyle.
Yeah. It's important. I think before we jump into these topics, because some of the things we're going to explore are pretty sensitive, and we have a disclaimer, but we're holding that disclaimer because we want to tell why this is important.
Yeah, tell us why it's important for you.
It's important to me because, my mom has always said this statement, and I don't want to throw anyone off, but I'm just going to tell you like how she told me. She says, Zach, you have a weird obsession with fat people. She's told me that before. And that's not a friendly thing to say, but it really comes down to it, guys. So in my first episode, I talk about how we were homeless. We have nowhere to go to. And my mom's friend, Janice, who, God rest her soul, she's not with us. I don't think she made it to 40. And she was absolutely morbidly obese. She was. But that's not who she was. Just because you're overweight, that is not who she was. And she made a huge impact on my life because she took an interest in me later on. It didn't not, growing up, I didn't like her, but later on she did. And she taught me so much about the human psyche. And, she was a wife. She was a sister. She always wanted to be a mother. And we were her children. Like we were her children. My older brother, younger brother, and me were her children. And such a special place for me. And, I would never forget it. I talked about this in the first episode, or the second episode, I don't remember. But my mom called me and she said, Zach, are you in a safe space? I said, no, Mom, at work. She said, oh, you got to call me back. And she was really upset. I said, Mom, what's going on? And after like 2 minutes of trying to get it out of her, she's like, well, I hate to tell you this at work, but, Janice died. And she died in her sleep. And it was really, really sad. And ever since then, I had a little obsession with, really morbidly obese people. Like I'm talking about 200, 300, 400 pounds overweight. I think Janice was about 200 pounds. She's like 5'2", 400 and something pounds. Not that I just say that just so you can illustrate like that. And, the doctor said she passed away in her sleep because she couldn't breathe. She choked on her weight. And so I've always had just an affinity for that because this is what I knew is what I grew up with. I wanted to save her. That's what I'm trying to tell you guys. I wanted to save her and I couldn't save her. And that's sad. So that's why it's important to me. And another reason why it's important to me is because over COVID, like all of us, I gained over 65 pounds. I was 315 pounds. I'd never been that big in my life. Never thought I could get that big in my life. And so sitting here now, I lost 45 pounds and I just didn't feel good. I couldn't, breathing was harder, moving was harder. I was uncomfortable. I did it to myself because the gyms were closed. I was depressed. I didn't have any social interactions. And so that's another reason why I think this is so important to me.